around. He sets and throws, and this ball is caught.
Welcome, Husker fans. Welcome to Big Red Country with Jeff. Again, I want to thank everyone that supported the channel. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Give it a thumbs up. That helps it get out. We talk all about Huskers, Husker sports, and a little extra other things that we feel like throwing in there or somebody wants to hear about. I wanted to answer some questions. I've been getting a lot of emails and been real busy the last couple of months. Some of you know that I am an accountant, so this is the busy time. It's tax season, so I'm putting in about 70 hours a week. Hard to do the videos and get them up. Doing the videos ain't really the problem, more than trying to edit and get them up. So thought about this year just kind of putting up as raw as they can be instead of going through them and trying to edit out some of the stupid crap I do. But wanted to answer some questions that I got, and I'm getting old, so I need glasses. And so I got a few emails. I couldn't do them all, sorry about that. But one of them that intrigued me was, one asked me what historic college coaches should be on the college football's Mount Rushmore if you want to do it. And I was thinking historic coaches, and forgive me, there's going to be a lot of outstanding coaches, and they said pick 4. So you're going to have a lot that people are going to disagree on, and probably more of the younger generation is going to disagree, and just because they didn't see or get a feel of how these coaches were way back then, when there really wasn't any talent or rivals.com. It was more of a gut feeling and developing players, where now with all these sites, mainly when you get into like the Southeast and all that, you know, it's not as difficult to win with 4-star, 5-star recruits constantly coming in. And of course now NIL has changed that up some. So kind of take this list with a grain of salt. It's just my opinion, and as you know, my opinion doesn't matter to most of you guys. And there, like I said, there's a lot of great coaches, and I know someone's going to, you know, especially younger generations, I'm going to make a big stink because I didn't throw like Nick Saban in there. And I'm not saying Nick doesn't belong up there, and don't get me wrong, Nick Saban was a great college coach, but he's always did it in the Southeast Conference, which is, to me, yes, a lot tougher competition, probably one of the tougher competition, because of all the outstanding players, 5-star recruits, 4-star recruits that almost all of them schools get, but with Georgia and Alabama probably getting a majority of them. And so it's hard to kind of judge. What would he have done in a place like Iowa or Colorado or even Nebraska? You know, to me, Tom Osborne had his hands tied. You know, he didn't. Nebraska is a very small community. There's probably, what, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't look it up, about 1 million, maybe 2 million in the whole state. You get them in the metropolitan areas in some of these places. And so it's not, you know, it's not as easy to get players up there and to get them to stay. I mean, a lot of these players that come in are shocked when they see Nebraska, saying, oh man, I was expecting to come here and see nothing but cornfields. I think they still think we use a can and a string to call, you know. Any of y'all seen Green Acres? I know I'm really giving up my age, but look at Green Acres. They used to climb up that telephone pole to make a phone call. So I think sometimes people think that's how Nebraska is and don't realize till they get here. But the one thing Nebraska has, and this is a credit to me, Husker fans, and I gotta admit, in Nebraska, there's not a major sports team. There's not a NFL team. There's not an NBA team. There's not a Major League Baseball team. The Huskers is all they have. But the difference is, until you go up there and see it, until you feel it, I'm talking about going up there on a game day on Saturday. Just go up there on the off season. There's a big difference. I grew up in Nebraska, but I've lived out of state probably most of my life. And because like in Texas here, you got multiple schools and all that. So it's kind of split, and people sometimes don't care. They got the Cowboys, they got the Mavericks, they even got a professional hockey team. So it's kind of divided out. It's still a football state, and it's got some great talent in it. But go up there and watch the fans on a Saturday game day. Just go just around the town, anywhere in the state. The one thing I like, this is the reason why, even with them losing and not doing as well as they have in the historic years that I grew up in, and I noticed it, and I'd have loved to took some film of this, but I thought it would be creepy me doing this, but you see a family there, the mom, the dad, then you see the two little kids. They're about 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. They're all dressed in red. They go to the games, and this is what they do as they grow up. So when they become adults, guess what? It's in their blood. I keep saying it's in their blood. So there's a big difference when it comes to that stuff. So because of that, you know, my top ones was that I thought should be on there. Paul Bear Bryant was one. Again, I grew up in that era. Was an outstanding coach. He grew up in an era where there wasn't there wasn't rankings for recruits. It was more of a feel. It was more going there and watching them, you know, scouting them. Another one that I had was John McKay of USC. Another one, historic coach, just brought that team to where maybe some of y'all know where it is. I kind of went back and forth on this. I almost threw Bobby Bowden in there, and I ended up throwing Barry Switzer in there. And I know Barry did some things that wasn't really approved, but he probably isn't doing anything different than what would be legal now because of NIL. But I also know he's a man that cared for his players and get hit because one of his players' family member died, and the kid couldn't even afford to go home to see it, and Barry paid for him to go home, which was a violation, which is a stupid violation. But I kind of understand why they did it. And Barry took that Oklahoma team and take it from someone that grew up in that era where for years he had Nebraska's number, dominating. The only thing that kept Nebraska probably from a few more national championships was Barry Switzer and that Sooner team. Tom Osborne learned a lot, and where his development to where Nebraska ended up being was because of them losses to Barry Switzer and what Barry Switzer had on them teams. One of the best teams Barry Switzer had was that 1978 team with Billy Sims. And I still remember that was yesterday because Tom Osborne hadn't beaten Oklahoma. And in that game, and Governor Jim Pillen, he was in that game, and he's the one that pounced on Oklahoma's 6th turnover of that game down around the 3-yard line with less than 2 minutes left in the game, maybe a minute and a half, if I remember right. It's a long time ago. It was 1978. I still remember it, though, like it was yesterday. So he has some history in that. And Nebraska only won 17-14 with Oklahoma having 6 turnovers in that game. And the sad thing is, it was a rough game. When you played Oklahoma, you knew it the next week. It was hard to go in. Normally Nebraska would play Oklahoma their very last game of the year. That year they didn't. They had one more. They had Missouri at home. And all they had to do was win that game. They would have been going to the national championship against, I believe, Penn State, if I'm not mistaken, for the national championship. What happens? Kellen Winslow and Missouri Tigers came into Lincoln, beat Tom Osborne and them Huskers 35-31. I remember that like it was yesterday. And what did the Bulls do? They rematched Nebraska with Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. I've beaten Oklahoma twice, and Oklahoma ended up winning that Orange Bowl 31-24, I believe, but don't let the score fool you. Nebraska scored late to make it 24. It wasn't really as close as the score made it look, but for a time they had it. So Barry knew how to coach and get the most out of his players. So I'm putting him on there. And of course, my last one is obviously Tom Osborne for what he's done. Just a wonderful man. Just smart as can be. He could predict things. If you had talked to any of his players, the way he could tell you what was going to happen in the game, and it would happen. He was the offensive coordinator for them teams, and never had a problem with his offense. He had to get that defense and things going, but by the 90s, he had it figured out. He had it going on, and I would have loved to seen how many more he could have won if he would have not retired in 1997. Nebraska in them 90s was probably one of the more dominant teams you've seen in history, and it wasn't even close. So I put Tom Osborne there, and he did that at Nebraska. A lot of them players were walk-on players, walk-on kids from Nebraska that just had a desire to bleed red and play for Nebraska no matter what it took. And he went out and grabbed that talent in them key positions, running back, quarterback with Tommy Frazier, running back with Mon Green, Lawrence Phillips, Mike Rozier back in the 80s. Lawrence Phillips, to me, if he would have kept his nose clean, to me probably would have been the best Nebraska running back ever there. And again, it's my opinion, but he was that good, and a lot of his players would have agreed that too. But because of his off the field issues, some of his things that he went through in his life, I feel for the kid, and I feel like he also got a raw deal. I thought they should have got him more help, and I don't mean the university more than I mean anywhere. Life sometimes is not fair. They feel like the answer is just lock him up, and when they did that, they ended this young man's life, basically. So that, to me, is my 4 if I was going to put that on there. Another question I get a lot of is, who will be Nebraska's starting quarterback come this year? And I know everybody's got Dylan Raiola. Yes, most likely it is Dylan Raiola, but if y'all been watching my videos, you know I am highly on Daniel Kaelin. I was one of the few when Dylan did decommit that I thought we'd be fine with Daniel Kaelin. I've known this kid since he was a freshman. I've watched him. I don't know him personally as in I could go to his house. I've watched him play personally. I've seen him, talk to him, and one of the smartest football IQs you're going to find anywhere. Peyton Manning was another one that had a very high IQ. I put Daniel Kaelin up there. Doesn't have the talent and the arm as Dylan Raiola, but he's not really that far off. And you also got to think, Daniel Kaelin doesn't have a NFL father that took him around and got him to all these football camps and these quarterback camps and took him around the country to the best. He didn't have that. He grew up there in Nebraska. So he's probably a little behind the 8 ball when it comes to development. Dylan's had a lot of professional things happen for him that most high school players didn't get. So to me, Dylan Raiola is probably the leader right now, and probably, if I had to guess, would be the starter. But do not count Daniel Kaelin out, and I guarantee you're going to see him in the game. You're going to see probably all 3 of these players in the game this year. Definitely probably Dylan Raiola, and you're probably going to see Danny Kaelin for at least 4 games, and if they could get away with it, they'll probably only do 4 games. But don't get me wrong, he could start. He could come out of this after spring and fall camp as the starter. It would not surprise me, and I think it's going to come down, believe it or not. If y'all remember back in the 90s when the Huskers had Brooke Behringer and Tommy Frazier, and they were battling it out. And the only reason at that time, and they were really close, the only reason Tommy kind of won that job is he had a few, not as many turnovers. And I think this is probably what it's going to come down to. Who knows the playbook well, which it sounds like they're both digging into there and they're both learning and they're both getting into it. So I think it's going to come down who can make the plays, who's making the plays and protecting the football. So don't get me wrong, it could be Heimberg. I know a lot of you going laughing at that because of what happened last year, but even though he is a junior, that was his starts last year. It's almost like going from his freshman to sophomore year. That was his first playing time and all that. He's getting a feel. First time under RHULE, Satterfield. I got a feeling you're going to see a considerable jump. And I think having Daniel Kaelin and Dylan RHULE is going to help Hubbard. So don't count him out, him being a starter from last year. If it's all equal, gets down to the end and they're all pretty even, I then expect Hubbard to get the start just because of the experience. And just like RHULE said in his conference, he's a starter from last year is not, a freshman ain't going to come in and start over last year if they're right there together. But I do think Dylan RHULE has probably got the edge over all of them and probably will end up being the starter. He'll probably edge it out. You'll probably hear about it in August, late in August, going into that first game. But again, it's probably going to come down to turnovers. If Daniel Kaelin gets it to where that's probably in practice where they weren't turning the ball over as much. And then as the season goes on, it's going to be who's playing well. I guarantee you RHULE and them is going to have a little quicker trigger finger when the ball's getting turned over like it was last year. You're going to probably see a little quicker. It's a learning experience too, so I could see them pulling one out, putting one in to do some teaching, to do some explaining, to say, hey, this is what we saw. What did you see? You know, then back in there again. So I kind of expect that. But if I had to pick right now, probably would be Dylan RHULE, but do not count Daniel Kaelin. Both of them are going to be, to me, NFL players, and I would love for both of them to be here at Nebraska their whole time. I just got a feeling that's probably not going to happen. But the good thing about Daniel Kaelin is he is a Nebraska boy, wants to play for Nebraska, and so I feel like if he's one that could end up staying if he's not in there. But we'll see how that turns out. The next one I get was what new players will make a big impact in 24. And I kind of talked about the quarterbacks there, so I don't need to bring them in. But I think them wide receivers, Banks, them, I think you're going to see a big impact on them. I wouldn't be surprised if Carter Nelson has a big impact. The only thing that's hurting him is he stayed to play the other sports in his high school, so he won't even get here until the summer. And so he might be a little behind, but I guarantee you're going to see him somewhere this year play at least his 4 games. But that Polynesian Bowl that I watched him and Dylan have a connection on, that kid's going to be, he's going to be good. He's going to be a star in this league, and hopefully he stays around. The thing about now is keeping him around now with the transfer portal. So I feel like on the defensive side, we're pretty well set there. We got a lot coming back. I don't know if any of the young guys are going to be able to come in here and take it in. That real possibility, but I do think a lot of them will get to play. But to make an impact, I think it's mainly going to be that receiving 2 transfers that came in. And I could easily see, like I said, Carter Nelson as one of the freshmen doing it, and even what's his name? Oh, I drew a blank there. It happens when you get old. I'll think about it later. So them are the main ones that to me would make an impact. Doesn't mean a lot of them won't play. You're going to see a lot of them secondary guys get in and get some reps. You saw RHULE do that last year. That's how he likes developing. And that's how you develop. You let them play. Teach as you go. It's a learning process. So I see that being going well this year. The next question I have is how I felt about Trev Albert's leaving for A&M and Troy Denon coming in as the new AD. And if you would have asked me about Trev Albert's leaving, I was as shocked as anyone. I would have said definitely not. There's no way he's going to leave Nebraska. He was an All-American here, played. His name's up on the stadium. I grew up in his. I was an adult in his era. I'm older than Trev is, so outstanding player. Loved the guy, even mainly when he played. So I would have never thought he left. But then after he left, you got to also think he's not really a Nebraska boy. I know everybody's going to say there's a difference in living and raising and born in Nebraska, and then you're in South Dakota or Iowa. And doesn't mean he doesn't root for Nebraska all that, but he don't have the ties there like I do, like a lot of you do, like Tom Osborne did. Tom Osborne was a Nebraska guy. So because of that, I wouldn't expect anyone that doesn't have ties there to stay. If Scott Frost would have worked out, I could have seen him stay. But because of that, after thinking about it, I'm going, it makes sense. He's not, yes, he loves Nebraska. Yeah, he wants Nebraska to win, but he's from Iowa. So kind of the same with Troy Denon. I think that's a good choice. I think it's a great choice. I think that's a Matt RHULE choice. And that was the smartest thing. You could tell they're all in with Matt RHULE. I am too, and I got a feeling 99% of you are. And what do you ought to do? You're giving him everything he needs to succeed. And you're seeing that there with Troy Denon, the new AD. You're seeing it with the NIL. And I think when this team starts pulling in this talent, you see this development, this team get back up, Matt RHULE's going to get all that credit. And in fairness to even Frost, they didn't have this NIL thing, but this is the biggest key that most people ain't talking about, is their commitment now to the NIL and making Nebraska one of the elite top NIL schools. And it's going to take a little time. They're probably already top 10, top 15 in the country. I think they're determined to make it number one, if not top 5, top 3, where that is not going to be an issue. You don't want to lose a player because that was the problem. And in Nebraska, it could probably be done just as well than almost anywhere else because of the way these fans are. And I donate to it. And I bet a lot of you do. I donate there. I have season tickets, so I have to donate there for the tickets. I grew up in an era where you couldn't get season tickets, where you had to have them willed into your family. And that's why I don't give them up. I live out of state, been living out of state for years, decades, probably most of y'all been alive. But I've always kept my tickets, even if I didn't go that year. I went up to a few last year. I gave the others away. Normally I didn't even give them away. If a family member called up saying, hey, you going to the game? Nah, can I have them? I'd give them to them. But because of this channel, I've been giving them away, and that's what I keep planning on doing. Matter of fact, this year I only had the one. I'm trying to grab 2, trying to grab the one right next to it. And so I might have to move my seats to try to get 2, but I want to give 2 away. So when I had I know I had someone who won them last year and wanted to take his, I believe his son, and I kind of felt bad because I only had 1, even though I was giving it away. I felt bad, and he was very understandable, very nice. I mean, oh no big deal, but that's when I thought about, I maybe need to get 2, so when I give them away, I'm giving 2, so you could take somebody, take your spouse, take your friend, take your, or sell them. I mean, once I give them to you, they're yours. So that's for anyone that is a member. I draw a name for the games a month in advance, so you get the tickets in advance. And if you want to be part of that, just hit that join button you see below the channel. It's not much, and it also helps support the channel. But anyone that's supporting the channel that's a member of the Big Red Country Club there is in the drawing for these tickets. and the memorabilia I give away every now and then too. So I also believe that don't be surprised down the road that he could end up leaving. Again, he's not a Nebraska guy. Yes, he's a Midwest guy. I think South Dakota's where he's from, if I'm not mistaken. So I could see him leaving. I could see him leaving the Iowa, or I think he'll stay probably around the Midwest. And that's the same with Matt RHULE. I don't see Matt RHULE staying here like Tom Osborne did. I do think Matty has one goal in his mind, because you guys, I know a lot of you have said Matt RHULE ain't staying. He'll go 3 years and he'll leave. He went to Temple, got him winning 3 years, he left to Baylor. Got Baylor winning 3 years. That's when it impressed me, because Baylor at that time was never a winning team. Got them winning, went to the NFL. NFL didn't kind of work out, and that doesn't mean he doesn't want to give it another try. He might. But I think now, and I don't know personally, this is just my opinion, I think now what has eluded Matt RHULE in the college ranks, he knows he can develop these teams and get them up, but he hasn't stayed long enough to get that conference championship and that national championship. I think that's what he wants to do, and I think that's what his goal is to do. But I could see him down the road, because they're now that 12-team college football playoffs, get Nebraska into that running where there are a shot of making them playoffs or even make the playoffs. And I think he wants that national championship, but even if he don't get it, if he finally gets them consistently winning to where they could be making that college football playoffs, and then I think something like Penn State came open, then I could see Matt RHULE leaving. I don't expect him. I don't expect it anytime soon, but I do expect some years down the road. He's got this program back on its feet, constantly winning, but I do think he really wants to win a conference championship. I think he wants to win a national championship, and that's what it's eluded him, and that to me would make him an elite coach. If he could do that, he'll be one of them top coaches. Could make that Mount Rushmore list on there down the road in history. So I think he really wants that, and I don't know personally, but it's just my opinion. But again, guys, I want to thank you for supporting this channel. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. If you like the video, it helps it get out. Even if you don't like me or you think I say something stupid, like the video. If you hit the like button, it gets it out where others see it and they can see how stupid I am or the dumb things I say. When you hit the dislike button, then no one else really gets to see it. And if that's what you want, then I understand. But for all you supporters out there that's part of the Big Red Country Club, thank you very much. Again, these tickets will be given out probably early August will be for the first month. I always do a month in advance of September games. So in August, I'll do the September games, and there's a lot of them in the September games. I do plan to go to 1 or 2 of them, but the others I'll give away. And remember, Nebraska's got a lot of their home games early this year, so a lot of them will be given away early this year, and then obviously whatever ones we have in the other months, again, a month in advance. That way I could get them to you. You can make plans depending where you're coming from, or it gives you time to sell them or give them to someone else if that's what you want to do. So again, thank you for your support, and until the next video, guys, go Big Red.